Hello, and welcome. I regret to inform you that this is going to be my final video with the Western Sidewinder. I'd like to give a big thank you to Keith at Airgun Tactical for sending this out for me to try. Before we get started, one thing that's really bothering me is this hole in my table. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of firing my Zeus at a watermelon on the table, and it blew a hole pretty much clean straight through the middle of the table, so now I'm going to have to avoid that. But other than that, let's get started. This is the third and final time I'm going to have this Western Sidewinder compact out, and each time I've been on a search to try and find slugs that work through this. So today we have these FX Hybrids 44.5 grain slugs. In case those don't work, I have these Zan lead-free pellets. These are 37 grain. When I was talking to Airgun Tactical about what slugs to run through this thing, he actually mentioned that Western Airguns suggested using ammo less than 40 grains. And that's actually pretty hard to come by. These are pretty much the only option that I can think of that is under 40 grains, because the standard 30 caliber rounds are 44.8 and up. We're gonna give these a shot. I'm not sure how well these are gonna work, or if these are gonna work at all, so we're just gonna have to find out right now. I haven't touched either of these ammos. If this video is just not going to be it, it'll probably be pretty short, but we'll just see what happens. All right, let's get started. Okay, so we're gonna be doing the same test as last time. I'm gonna start off at 30 yards, move to 70, and then 100 yards. I actually don't really have high hopes for the slugs. I'm hoping the pellets really work out well. These might just be all over the place, so these, we'll work through the different distances. If they're really sloppy, you'll just see how bad it gets as we move further. Let's get started at 30 yards. I'll sight this in, and we'll just go from there. The 44.5 grain FX Hybrid slugs are loaded up. Let's get sighted in and get some chronograph readings. 920 feet per second, 909 feet per second, 907 feet per second. Let's go for that far left center line. Let's go for top middle headshot. I believe these pellets are grouping a little bit better than the last ones that I had out, but the pellets still have better accuracy. Let's run these Zan 37 grain pellets and see how those do. I have 12 of the Zan 37 grain pellets loaded up, but one thing I want to go over first is the price on these. I paid an extraordinary amount of money to bring these in. They came straight from Slovenia, and surprisingly, they made it here in, like, I think maybe 3 or 4 days, which is pretty impressive. Granted that shipping cost was almost nearly as much as the pellets themselves. Check this out. So we're rocking nearly $60 pellets here because the shipping price was just insane. But apparently, I don't know anywhere else to even get these in the United States. And I really wanted to try these out to give this thing the best shot possible. Literally. But let's try these out, see if they're actually worth the money. Let's go for the far right center line. 968 feet per second. 965 feet per second. Duplicate. I'm actually going to lower the power wheel a little bit. I'm going to get probably closer to, let's get around 900 feet per second. See if these group a little bit better. All right, I detuned it. We're down to 890 feet per second. I think I'm just going to leave it there. Let's do one more group at 30 yards, see how well this does. So we dialed it back down to 890, 900 feet per second, and these seem to be doing a little bit better here. So I think I'm going to throw a know your limit in the mix. Let's do one of those here at 30 yards. I'll stick with just the Zan pellets. Those are probably going to be the most accurate. Maybe I'll switch to the slugs at some point, but that's probably just asking too much from those. So we'll do a know your limits here at 30. If we can do it at 70, we'll do it at 70 and then up to 100 and just I'll give it like one magazine of rounds worth of shooting at it. If I don't have enough ammo to really waste too much of it, because I just have, what are these? I think I have like 100 rounds or something like that with these pellets. So I got to play a little bit safe. So we'll just see what happens. Let's do one at 30 yards. Plus I have one Moldy Cantaloupe that I need to evaporate. All right, we are pretty dialed in here. Time to blow up that cantaloupe, and then we'll move on to 70. We're gonna aim straight for those mold spores. Let's finish it off with some of these FX hybrids. All right, let's see what we did to it. I was actually kind of expecting that cantaloupe to be shredded a little bit more, but let's just move on to 70 yards. We have the FX hybrids loaded in. I'm gonna do a chronograph test again just to see where we're sitting with these slugs now that I detuned it a little bit. I also made a guesstimate on elevation, so let's just aim for center bullseye. .848 feet per second, and that was a dead-on target. I don't want to jinx it, but maybe these will group a little bit better now that it's been detuned. I think I jinxed it. As I originally expected, not that great at 70 yards. Let's try these pellets out. All right, I'm gonna shift this just a little bit to the left. Let's go for a top middle headshot. Wow, these are actually doing pretty good. If you might have noticed, there's a Pepsi down there, so let's just see if we can take that out in one shot. We'll move on to the know your limits. All right, know your limit time. I'm gonna give myself 12 rounds to hit this. So let's reload, top off with air, and then see if we can take that out. We did that in 7 shots. I don't know what was going on, but they were veering off right at the last second. So, not sure what was up with that. Let's move on to 100 yards. All right, sorry, I lied. You know I can't move on without taking out that Texas Star. That is one stubborn plate. That thing was whipping around like crazy though. I think that might have been one of the fastest I've ever seen it. FX hybrids are loaded up. Let's see how well this does at 100 yards. I'll take another guesstimate where we need to be for elevation. That was crazy low. I didn't even realize I was hitting the target. Now it's hitting so high. I was kind of hopeful for those slugs when I saw those two group up pretty decently, but then, well, you saw what happened. Time for the Zans. Let's go for far right center line. I'm gonna dial us in a little bit as I go. Okay, I can tell just from looking through the scope that these rounds are like destabilizing as they're going down there. They're kind of like corkscrewing a little bit, so I'm not too hopeful of these at 100 yards. That is insane. Okay, I guess this is pretty much the limit of these rounds. The hybrids, maybe at 30 to 50 yards max. I probably just wouldn't even bother using them. These lead-free alloy pellets, 70 yards is pretty decent, but I just can't believe, I wish I had this recorded on the scope cam, the pellet is just doing these corkscrews. It's absolutely insane seeing it. Okay, so I'm gonna call it quits for these pellets and the slugs, but just for the sake of things and that 100 yards know your limit, I want to swap out for some of the AEA 45 grain or maybe 50 grain pellets. I'll probably just stick with the 45 grains. Let's see how well those do and just do a group and wrap up. So it looks like I only have the 50.5 grain AEA pellets left. I wish I had some of the 45 grainers, but let's have to stick with these. I did bump the power wheel up to the max again. We're at about 850 feet per second, so let's see what we can get for a group. I'm probably going to have to dial this in a little bit more on the scope, and then we'll finish off with like a maybe 2-3 round groups. I really wish I had those 45 grain pellets. I'm pretty sure that's what this thing prefers over the other stuff. Like I said, the lighter the better. This is recommended for under 40 grain pellets, which is just so bizarre to me. Let me do one more group and wrap up. I don't even think I'm gonna go for the know your limits. These just seem to be kind of like grouping wild, so fortunately, this is what we're gonna be wrapping up with. All right, screw it. We're gonna do it. Know your limits is coming up.
Great ass!
Okay, last 12 rounds I'm gonna be putting through this Sidewinder before I have to send it back. Let's see if we can take out that know your limits target. I was compensating pretty low into the left because I could see the impacts in the dirt. I just can't believe I actually nailed that last one. That's crazy. All right, that might have been just a stroke of luck, but we actually did take out the know your limits target at 100 yards of those pellets. I'm actually kind of disappointed that there aren't really slugs that I've found that are performing anywhere close to the accuracy of the pellets through this thing. And granted, Western Airguns recommends pellets over slugs, and I guess that is just the case of this rifle, so pellets seem to be the way to go. If anyone has slugs that they prefer and use to this thing, I really would love to know what they're using and, you know, what velocity they're setting their Western Sidewinder at, because I'm just kind of disappointed that this thing really doesn't like slugs. Compared to the Rattler, it just pretty much likes any ammo that you put through it. Pellets just work phenomenal, even at 100 yards. But when you get down to slugs, and one thing I'd like to mention too, is granted, this thing doesn't have the power, but the magazine on this is pretty narrow. I was really hopeful to be able to use my Griffin ammo, the Boat Tail 78 grain slugs. But the first thing I saw was how narrow this magazine is. Compared to the Rattler can pretty much like accommodate anything. You could use a 78 grain slug, or a pellet rather, or you could use a 178 grain slug. So you're talking, there's so much flexibility in that magazine for whatever you really want to use, and like I said, it pretty much likes everything. With pellets, this thing does pretty fine, until you get to those lead-free alloy pellets that just corkscrew at 100 yards, but at 70, I thought they were doing pretty good. We put 3 rounds in that headshot That was a pretty decent group there, and we were able to take down the Know Your Limits at 70, but I'm just honestly amazed how poorly they performed at 100. That was just insane to see through the scope, the spiraling and corkscrewing. I wish I had that recorded on a scope cam, but like I said, I was hopeful for them because they were under that 40 grain threshold that Western Airguns recommends, which to me, once again, it just seems really bizarre because there's, other than that ammo, I can't think of anything else that weighs under that 40 grain threshold. Those are the only things I came across, and I spent $60 just to test those out to see if they would be better, but unfortunately, they are not. So I guess we're just gonna have to leave it there. If you have slugs that work through this thing, please let me know. I'd really like to find out, but unfortunately, it's probably gonna get sent back before I even get a chance to, but just out of my own curiosity, I'd really like to know. All right, with that, I'll see ya.